Hey guys, how's it going? It's Kara here with another Guardian Tales video. And in today's video, I want to talk about how I evaluate whether or not if a character is worth pulling or not. If you're looking for content like this, please consider subscribing to the channel, covering a whole bunch of games a year in Raid, Exos, and Guardian Tales. Hopefully this is the video that earns your subscription today. What I want to talk about is every single character that comes out, everyone's going to want to know whether or not if a character's worth it. So I wanted to give you guys how I look at a character and whether or not I consider the character worth it or not. I think it's very important to first start this off with defining what worth it means. The way I define, and I think everyone's going to have their own opinion on what worth it is. Like, is the character fun to play? Is the character really meta defining? Is the character like fit their comp kind of thing? Like how I define the character is I'm looking at from the perspective of my viewer that is either free to play or a light spender that wants to get the most impactful character for their account. That's how I'm looking at what is worth it. When I look at a character, whether or not they're worth pulling for, it's very subjective in the sense of where they're in the game. And then they should always factor in exactly where their account is. And does this character fit their character in regards to how well it will impact their Coliseum and Arena performance? Because I want that character to not only excel in Arena, but I want them to excel in Coliseum as well. And that's always going to be changing regardless, whether or not, if you watch, like let's say I do a video on Beth, and in a few months you watch that video, I feel like this concept is going to survive significantly longer than the advice of that video. So that's why I'm gonna leave this card up every single time I do a champion guide, talking about my thought process before you watch the video on, is that character worth it? There's no real order here. All of this is equally as important. That's the first thing. Is the character meta defining? Are they? If you look on Coliseum, if you look on Arena, are you going to see them up here? Are you going to see them in the top of the rankings? Right now, as you can see here, Future Princess Ogba, literally everywhere. Then you go over here to Arena ranking. You see them all over the place. You see Future Princess Ogba. Look at this usage rates. But then this is a really good example for Beth in general. Look at how she's already everywhere in the top. She's that right there. That's a very good sign to know, hey, this character is absolutely incredible in Arena. Like that's just, but notice how this character is literally everywhere in Arena. But then you look over here in Coliseum, nowhere to be found. Let's see if she's anywhere. You can't even find her anywhere. So she's a god in one side of the game. Like an absolute god. Like I haven't seen that much usage rate this quickly for a character, like at the top like that. Like period. Even Future Princess took a little bit. It was high usage rate, yes, but I feel like that's a little bit more than what I'm used to. But you don't see her anywhere here. Next part you have to consider is where you're at in your farms. You're still going, yes, this character is pulling for it, but then you're still going to have to consider when you actually are going to finally get or bring him or her up based on whoever you pick, because I think it's way more important. Hopefully the characters you picked previously were not mistakes. They're still good characters. So finishing those evolution farms, max limit breaking them, getting them ready for someone like your next character is going to be far more important than just stopping that farm and moving on to farming whatever this character is. That's something to consider. So you're going to want to have good synergy. Let's say you have a ton of melee characters and you pull out another melee character. So yes, you're going to excel in Arena, but are you going to excel in Coliseum? Are you just kind of gimping yourself because now you have two tanks and Beth, who is not very good in Coliseum? That's something I liked to keep in mind before actually going for those pulls on these characters. So like we have examples. It seems like the last characters that have come out, we've looking back. So we had Garem, who's a Coliseum god. Then we had Future Princess, who is my definition of a must pull. Then before that we had Maya, Coliseum god, not necessarily that good in Arena. I've seen success with her, but you may not meta defining or anything like that. And then before that, Ogma, absolutely, that would be another definition of must pull, amazing in both situations. So that's kind of how I look at if a character is going to be worth it or not. I'm going to check usage rate. I'm going to check, does it fit your comp? We're trying to get a good core. I would say you would want to make your main three more focused on Arena, and then try to make that fourth character that you get to use the training room on as a Coliseum character. You can kind of flex that. That's how I would look at building my roster in the most logical way possible. So you could kind of get away with, how my original example, like let's say you have two tanks and then do you really want Beth? She's absolutely amazing in Arena. And if you get her up, then you're going to be able to take someone up for free essentially in the training room. So then you can use that on a Coliseum character, like a Coliseum god or something like that. So now we've seen the usage rates. Now we've seen where these characters seem to excel. This is probably the hardest part out of this whole process. But now we got to be able to go in and look at a character and see what about a character makes them a good character. So like what I like to do, I always like to go to the book. I feel like this is going to be the part that's going to take the most game knowledge, and it's also going to take whatever time you're actually looking at the characters. So we have Beth here. We have the new character that's come out. First thing I always look at is their stats to see where they kind of line up with other characters. It's really good to have a knowledge of how other characters' stats are, so you could really at one glance you really see how that character is. Like for example, you look at, okay, so she has a better base defense than Ogma here. And Ogma is known to be a very tanky character. She has like about 4k less HP, but then at the same time he's a shield wearer, so he's gonna still have way more defense. So he's still significantly tankier. He's gonna potentially be like a character on his level. Let's go to Eugene here. Maybe compare those two. So Eugene has 200 defense, so still beating her out a bit. Has roughly about the same level of tankiness as her. So that just from a raw numbers perspective. So then that's one of the first steps I do when actually looking at the character. Next, we go back here. Then that's when I want to look at the party move. Okay, so 50% melee attack. I really like 50% melee attack. That's another thing that Eugene does. And in Arena, there's a lot, depending on the map when this actually excels, but there's a lot of these big bruiser comps of like Marina, Future Princess, and then like Eugene, or like Ogma, Future Princess, Eugene, or something like that, where the people have had success with melee attack comps. So that's something I'm looking at that and like, okay, that's a really good passive. I've seen that in situations. It's probably not like the best. I like other ones. It's been proven to be solid in the meta and something you want to account for. So we've already kind of gotten a proven track record on it. And now that I looked at that, we look at what kind of weapon she has. I like to try to get an idea of how they look when being played. Another thing you could do is you could look at the character. Yeah, here, like for example, you could kind of get an idea of how the attack animation is, see how quick it is. But the best thing, if you're really gonna go that far into detail, I would either, have an account on the other server or watch videos on gameplay from the other server, and so you can kind of get an idea of how it looks. Because I think that really matters. Like, does it look clunky? Like, I would say a character that was pretty clunky is Bianca, for example. Like, just compared to some smoother attack animations. Like, and then we go here. You know what? I'll just kind of show it. We go into the guild here. You can see that you could really get an idea of how the character works when you're actually in here, and you can see how this move, like, I didn't realize just how long range it was. Like this, so Garem, for example, that was one of the big defining things I learned after playing him, is he's crazy long range. Compared to all the basket users, that's one of the major benefits he has. You might not know that by just looking at the moves on the kit. You switch over here to someone like Future Princess. You want to actually go here. So switching to this, you might, like have to learn the attack animation, and then the pattern. You can like this jump move here. It's a really good dash. You can learn that. You can learn that like every time you do that, then you finally get the ranged. So I've been taking advantage of just knowing that in certain situations in Arena, and I think that's gonna really give you an idea of just how the character plays, and you can theory craft a little bit, and then I think that really helps out with that process. So now that we kind of get an idea of how they're actually going to play, let's go back into the book here and look at the rest of their kit and how I kind of look at it. I really like looking at the special passive here. A lot of these are really big parts of a character's kit. And then another thing too is just how much damage they do with their chain skill, and then what type of damage they do with their chain skill, because there's so many parts of content that are affected by that. A lot of time gated things where like the higher end content, it's not really about can you survive, it's about can you damage them in enough time, and having high chain skills really matters. Like for example, this condenses mana to inflict 400% range damage. 400% is on the high end. And then if we look at her base attack, like I would say that's a pretty good base attack. Like yes, there's better Bari, Garem, stuff like that. They're going to be like 1,000 range. That goes back to my previous point of just knowing people's base stats and kind of so you know how much percentage damage Bari does, you know how much percentage damage Garem does, and then that percent modifier is different than how hers is because 400% of a lower number. Like those kind of things matter. And knowing that these high chain skill numbers really matter for clearing those contents in this within the time frame are important. And I look at this when I see high percentage moves, I get excited by that because it's like, oh, okay, I know that that's going to really help me clear content. Like, for example, I'm stuck on orbital lift stage 350 because this person needs to be bursted down, and you need to have like good melee chain skills to be able to beat someone like that. And I just don't have the capability of beating it until I finally get a character that has enough damage within that. So that's one thing I look for. And then I'm going to apply that same concept over to Tower of Horizon, because you're time gated. If it's anything similar to the light one, you're time gated against certain bosses. So the chain skills is really going to apply to making sure you can beat them quickly. And then also in Camazon Zone, this is kind of like a light thing because it's not that big of a deal. But a lot of times the reason why you lose is because, like, let's say it's ranged or it's melee and they're immune to range or they're immune to melee. And then, but those are your characters you're really relying on to do the most damage. But you just can't beat them quick enough because you get someone like, I don't know, someone that just has like 150% damage skill move. Like you look at Bianca, for example, they just don't do enough damage. Like her, you check her skill move here, or chain skill move, and it is 150% DPS. It's just not enough. Like, yes, she's super survivable, but I'm not worried about survivability. I'm worried about doing the deeps. So that's another thing I like to look at for a character, especially when it comes to all the other content in the game, not just Arena and Coliseum. I think those are the concepts out of looking at a character that apply to all characters. If I went further into it, it was just going to be very specific things to just Beth, and that's not really the point of this video. I feel like all of these are just guidelines. They're not hard rules. There's always going to be exceptions to these, but I think this is the framework that I use to determine if a character is worth it or not. I'm trying to put myself in the perspective of someone that's not going to have that many gems to use. So you could give the advice, you could save up your gems, you could do everything right and still get screwed over by bad RNG. So that's why I like to be very careful with who I'm recommending. Like I want them to be absolutely like a good character that's going to get you a long way. And also at the same time, I'm going to say what I'm defining it. So there's no miscommunication here on what you consider what's a good character and what I consider is a good character and what is worth it, because that's a very subjective term, but hopefully this better defines it. I believe that's all I have to say in this video. Be sure to subscribe for those actual guides of those specific characters here in the future. One on Beth here pretty soon. And with that, you guys have a good one. Peace.